Welcome to the Whurthy Services Training Video Series. This is Module 2, the Service Provider's Experience. The basic idea behind the next couple of videos is that in order for services to be delivered, they need to be delivered from somewhere. So we're really going to be diving into what needs to happen to set up the locations, the places from where these services are delivered in such a way that customers and staff are empowered. And as a part of looking at the Whurthy Foundation, when it comes to location, we're going to be looking at the geography in terms of the number of locations you have, time zones, that sort of thing. We're going to look at opening hours, and we're also going to look at tax scope, whether or not you want to tax, if you're taxing globally or by location, by venue. Now that we're shifting away from the previous module where the focus was the staff's experience, now with the service provider's experience, we're starting to look at some of the more administrative elements and features of the Whurthy services experience. So this video is very much aimed at the super users in particular. Super users are the business owners, senior leadership. There are also business admin, user accounts as a security level, and then there are staff accounts as a security level, and then there are the user accounts, which are the end users, your customers. So when we want to get to the global settings, to Whurthy settings, underneath administration, we can all the way down in the administration settings, towards the bottom, you'll see Whurthy settings. So click on Whurthy settings and it takes us to the global settings. Now, we're not going to look in this video at all of these settings. There will be more videos where we unpack this and we really dive deep into the features as we need to. In this case, though, we're going to start with this first setting, multiple locations. We're then going to have, which is up here in this first section under general settings. Then we're going to have a quick look at different location time zones. Then we're going to look at opening hours. And then finally, we'll look at tax settings. Okay, so I'm going to dive in, click on Edit Settings at the bottom. And so within that first section, Edit Company Settings, we come to the third field here. And when we read these fields in settings, the field descriptions have been written with the intention of providing as much clarity as efficiently as possible. So I'm just going to go ahead and read these field descriptions out. Multiple locations. Does this organization have multiple locations, rooms for appointments? Selecting no will cause Whurthy to use the default business address. So if I select no, this single location address opens up. And then the description here says, if Whurthy is being used for appointments at just one location room, enter an address. This address will only be used if multiple locations were selected as no. This setting is only recommended for organizations with only one room or location. So, and just returning to the rest of this, then it says selecting yes will require you to select a location for each appointment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select yes. So when we move into the second video that follows this, by having multiple locations set up, that's where we'll actually be able to set up those different locations. So if you are an organization that has just one location, one room, really you'll be making those decisions in the global settings. In other words, you make these location or these foundation settings in one place, and then it's taken care of. If you've got multiple rooms, multiple locations, if, for example, you have different service delivery providers, they have their own room that they work in, then you're absolutely going to want to have multiple locations. So going to carry on down to the next section here. Going to skip past Edit Loyalty Program Settings, and I'm now going to come down to Edit Whurthy Services Settings. If you're a super user and you are following along, you will notice that you can't see this field Whurthy Services active. Only the Whurthy team can see this particular field. So this won't show for you. This is something that we do behind the scenes. So I'm going to jump down here to the different location time zones. This would be the first field you can see in the Whurthy Services settings. So the default setting is no for those organizations that are located in a single time zone. If your organization has locations in different time zones, then select yes. Because therapists are associated with the location, this will enable Whurthy to account for the therapist's local time zone when bookings are made. We're not really going to dive into that, but the main point of sharing this with you is we're going to leave that as no. probably for most organizations. And when there are those situations, if you need this to be set as yes, then we'll dive into that and we'll explain how that works. As a result, though, because it's no, the ability to set that time zone abbreviation for each location, it will be hidden. So that covers the geography. We've talked about single versus multiple locations, and we talked about location time zone abbreviations. So now I'm going to jump down now to the opening hours. So this is pretty straightforward. We've touched on this before. The way to look at opening hours is this is almost like the earliest and the latest that something can happen, that a service can be delivered, that a service or a therapist, a service provider could work. So for example, when you are setting up service providers, working hours, start time, end time, those start and end times cannot fall outside of your opening and closing hours globally. So typically for 95% of organizations, you will probably have like a global set of opening and closing hours. And if you have different opening and closing hours, our recommendation would just be to pick the widest range. So the earliest time on a given day and the latest time across all your locations. And then that will take care of not hitting that constraint. And at the same time, remember, because there'll be the configuration of the starting time for each day for a service provider, as well as the ending or closing time, or when the service provider stops working on a given day, that is really what is going to be checked when it comes to Whurthy working out what openings are there. Okay, so that covers opening hours. And then I'm going to go down to the final section. This is quite simple. Editing tax settings. Basically, the first choice that you get, I'm going to set this as no, and that field to the right disappears. Do you wish to explicitly add tax to appointments? Selecting no will result in the appointment amounts being net. Selecting yes will allow you to explicitly set tax labels and amounts to be applied to appointments. So this gives you the flexibility. If you, as an organization, have a retail point of sale system and you've got all the financial stuff taken care of, this will allow you to have taxation taken care of without having to do double entry. That being said, it's our suspicion that most organizations will set yes. And then you get the choice of, do you want to set that tax scope globally? Do you wish to set a single tax structure for all appointments or all locations, or to set a tax structure for each location? Selecting by venue will require you to enter at least one tax label and amount for each location. So as I've got global here, it's showing me the tax label 1, the tax percentage, and then tax label 2 and tax percentage. I'm located in Alberta. We just have GST. If we were in Ontario, we'd have HST, I believe. And if you're in a province that has GST and PST, then you have the option to enter those labels in. And what we're going to do is I'm going to leave that as by venue, just from a training point of view. Okay. And so when we're done with those settings, we can click on Update Global Settings, and we'll return back to the Global Settings page. And so that concludes the review of Whurthy Foundation. In other words, getting those key settings set up so that we're able to get into the setup of locations. Whurthy. Value made easy.